She thought she was only marrying him for money, a desperate deal to save her family from ruin. He swore he'd never love again, using a fake wedding to claim his father's fortune. But every stolen glance, every tender touch, every sleepless night together blurred the line between pretense and passion, until lies and jealousy tore them apart, leaving two broken hearts longing for a second chance. Can a love born from a lie become something real? Or will the truth destroy them forever? Stay with us for a story of betrayal, redemption, and a wedding that no one saw coming. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss more powerful tales of love, heartbreak, and second chances right here on Hearts and Billions. Ava wiped her paint-covered hands on her worn jeans, her heart heavy as she looked at the overdue bills scattered across her tiny studio apartment. Her mother's health was getting worse, and Ava couldn't sell enough paintings to keep up with the rising costs. She felt trapped, alone, and desperate for a miracle. That miracle appeared one rainy evening, when she was asked to deliver a painting to a luxury hotel. There in a private lounge, she met Daniel Carter, a billionaire known for his cold heart and perfect suits. His eyes were sharp, his voice calm, but there was something dark and lonely in the way he looked at her. Daniel needed a wife immediately. His father's will demanded he marry within a month or lose his inheritance, an empire he'd spent his life building. Ava was perfect, unknown, desperate, and with no one who could complicate the plan. He offered her a contract, 1 year of marriage, appearances at events, and a paycheck big enough to pay her mother's medical bills and wipe out her debts forever. Ava's heart pounded as he slid the papers across the table. "It's just business," Daniel said coldly. "No feelings, no questions, just sign. And we both get what we need." Ava stared at the pen. Her mind screamed that it was wrong, but the thought of losing her mother crushed every hesitation. With trembling hands and tears burning in her eyes, she signed her name, sealing a deal that would change both of their lives forever. The day of their wedding arrived far too quickly. Ava stood alone in the courthouse bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Her borrowed white dress hung awkwardly on her thin frame, and she tried to smooth her shaking hands. This wasn't how she ever dreamed of getting married. Meanwhile, Daniel waited outside the courtroom, his expression unreadable as he adjusted his cufflinks. Every movement was perfect, controlled, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. They exchanged vows in a sterile courthouse chamber, the words sounding empty as they echoed off the cold marble walls. There were no flowers, no family, no joy, just the quiet scratch of the judge's pen as he finalized their marriage certificate. When it was done, Daniel offered his arm stiffly, his face calm but distant. Photographers hired to create an illusion of love waited outside. They posed together on the courthouse steps, forcing smiles as cameras flashed. Ava's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. The photos would go to the press, painting them as a perfect newlywed couple, when in reality every step felt like a lie. As they drove away in Daniel's sleek black car, the silence between them was deafening. Ava stared out the window, her heart aching. She told herself over and over, "It's just 1 year, you can survive this." But deep down, something told her that surviving wouldn't be enough, because every second with Daniel was already pulling her into a world she wasn't sure she could escape. The car pulled up to Daniel's penthouse, a glittering glass tower in the heart of the city. Ava stepped inside and gasped. The ceilings stretched higher than she'd ever seen, walls lined with priceless art, and floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city skyline sparkling like 1,000 stars. It felt like another world, cold, silent, and impossibly grand. A butler showed her to a guest bedroom, far from Daniel's own. As she unpacked her small bag of clothes, the emptiness of the massive room swallowed her whole. She sat on the edge of the bed, hugging herself as doubts clawed at her heart. The next morning, they ate breakfast together at a long table that felt like it could seat 20. Daniel read the newspaper in silence, occasionally glancing up at her with an unreadable expression. Ava tried to make small talk, but each question she asked was met with a curt answer. "You don't have to pretend when we're alone," Daniel finally said, setting the paper down. His voice was cool but softer than she expected. "Just follow the schedule. Our first event as a married couple is tomorrow night." Ava nodded, forcing herself to breathe. When Daniel left for work, Ava wandered the penthouse, trailing her fingers over the polished surfaces. In his private study, she found hints of a man she didn't know, photographs of a little boy with a kind smile, a piano covered in dust, and an unopened bottle of wine labeled with a date from years ago. She realized this place, despite its beauty, felt just as lonely as she did. And though their marriage was supposed to be fake, Ava wondered if they were both pretending about more than just love. Their first event as a married couple was a glamorous gala in a glittering hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above them, and guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos whispered and watched as Daniel entered with Ava on his arm. Ava felt the weight of every stare. She kept her back straight, forcing a polite smile, her hand resting lightly on Daniel's. His grip was firm and cold, a reminder that everything between them was a performance. They danced once for the cameras. As the orchestra played, Ava moved stiffly in his arms, but Daniel leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Relax," he murmured almost kindly. "We have to look convincing." She looked up, startled by the softness in his voice. For a moment, his eyes held hers, and something unspoken passed between them. His hand tightened slightly on her waist, and she felt a rush of heat she couldn't explain. Later, Ava charmed his business associates with genuine warmth, laughing at jokes and asking questions with sincere curiosity. Daniel watched her from across the room, unable to tear his eyes away from her bright smile. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his heart, something that both frightened and fascinated him. That night back at the penthouse, they stood awkwardly in the hallway. Ava started to thank him for his kindness at the gala, but he interrupted, his voice low. "You were perfect tonight," he said, eyes locked on hers. Ava's breath caught. It was the first compliment he'd ever given her, and it felt far too real for a fake marriage. In the silence that followed, their eyes lingered on each other just a little too long. The line between pretense and something deeper began to blur, and neither of them knew how to stop it. Just when Ava and Daniel were beginning to slip into an uneasy rhythm, the past came crashing into their fragile world. Daniel's ex-fiancée, Vanessa, returned to the city. She was stunning, confident and furious when she saw the photos of Daniel's sudden marriage splashed across the tabloids. Vanessa showed up uninvited at one of Daniel's charity events. Cutting through the crowd like a storm, Ava stood frozen as Vanessa approached, her eyes sharp and lips curled into a cruel smile. "So you're the replacement," Vanessa sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "You must have cost him a fortune." Daniel stepped between them, his face dark with anger. But Vanessa wasn't finished. She made sure to speak loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, hinting that Ava was nothing more than a paid actress in a fake marriage. Guests began to whisper, cameras flashed, and Ava's cheeks burned with humiliation. That night, Ava sat alone in her room, tears streaming down her face. She heard Daniel arguing with Vanessa in the foyer, his voice low and furious. When he finally came to her door, he hesitated before knocking. He found her curled up on the bed. Eyes red, he sat beside her, his hand hovering uncertainly over hers. "She's lying," Ava whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you." Daniel looked torn, his jaw tight. He wanted to comfort her, but old wounds made him pull back. He stood abruptly, his eyes shadowed. "We just need to stick to the plan," he said coldly, though his voice shook. "That's all that matters." But as he left, Ava saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, and she knew he was as lost in their fake marriage as she was. The tension between Ava and Daniel grew with each passing day. They avoided each other in the penthouse, their words clipped and cold when they had to speak. But beneath the silence, emotions simmered, anger, confusion, longing. One night, Ava woke to strange noises. She crept down the dark hallway to find Daniel slumped in the living room chair, his shirt rumpled and skin pale with fever. His breathing was shallow, eyes glazed with exhaustion. Without thinking, Ava rushed to his side. She knelt, pressing a cool cloth to his burning forehead. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he looked at her not with suspicion or distance, but with desperate vulnerability. "Ava," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking, "don't leave me." Her heart twisted. She stayed by his side through the night, changing his cloth, whispering words of comfort, and holding his hand. In his fevered haze, he confessed fragments of his past, about his father's impossible expectations, his fear of betrayal, and the emptiness that had haunted him since Vanessa left. "I thought love was a weakness," he murmured, tears sliding down his cheeks. "But you make me feel like I'm worth something." Ava's own tears fell as she realized how much he was hurting, and how much she cared for him, despite every warning she'd given her heart. When dawn broke, Daniel's fever finally subsided. He woke to find Ava asleep with her head resting on his chest, their hands still entwined. For the first time, the walls around his heart began to crumble, and he wondered if their fake marriage had already turned into something real. Just as Ava and Daniel's walls were beginning to fall, the fragile peace they'd found shattered. A rival businessman, eager to ruin Daniel, leaked a copy of their marriage contract to the tabloids. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire's marriage exposed as a fake." Cameras camped outside their penthouse. Reporters shouted cruel questions. Ava's face was plastered everywhere, painted as a liar and a gold digger. Inside, Daniel was furious, but his anger wasn't just at the leak. His old fears twisted everything. When Ava tried to explain, he cut her off, eyes cold and voice sharp. "How could you let this happen?" he demanded, though tears shimmered in his eyes. "Did you leak it for more money?" "No," Ava sobbed, grabbing his hand. "I love you, Daniel. I never wanted this." But Daniel pulled away, his face closing off completely. "I can't trust you," he said hoarsely. "Leave now." Ava packed her things with trembling hands, the memories of their tender moments breaking her heart all over again. Outside, flashing cameras blinded her as she fled into the freezing night. As the door slammed behind her, Daniel sank to his knees in the empty penthouse, clutching the ring he had secretly bought for the woman he was now convinced he'd lost forever. Ava tried to move on, pouring herself into her art and spending long days at her mother's bedside. But every night, memories of Daniel's quiet laughter and the way he looked at her haunted her. Meanwhile, Daniel's world crumbled without her. The penthouse felt like a prison, empty and cold. He couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't stop replaying the moment he let her walk away. He finally realized he had been wrong. His fear of betrayal had blinded him to the one person who saw him for who he really was. Determined to make things right, Daniel found Ava at her first art gallery opening. The room fell silent as he walked in. Eyes locked on hers, he dropped to one knee, not caring about the gasps around them. "Ava," he said, voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Our wedding started as a lie, but my love for you is the truest thing I've ever known. Please marry me again for real this time." Tears streamed down Ava's face. She pulled him up and hugged him tightly, whispering, "I love you, Daniel, I always have." A few weeks later, they married again, but this time, there were no contracts or cameras. Only friends and family gathered under twinkling lights. As they said their vows, their voices cracked with emotion, and there wasn't a dry eye in sight. Their kiss sealed a promise they would never break, to love honestly, to fight for each other, and to turn a fake wedding into the truest love they had ever known. In the months after their real wedding, Ava and Daniel worked side by side to rebuild what they almost lost. They faced gossip, judgment, and lingering doubts from people who believed their marriage was still a scam. But they leaned on each other, stronger than any rumor. Daniel publicly announced his commitment to Ava at a company gala, holding her hand as he told the room how she had changed his life. The employees, once skeptical, gave them a standing ovation, their applause washing away the last shadows of doubt. Ava moved her mother into their home, filling the once empty penthouse with warmth and laughter. Daniel insisted on joining Ava at doctor's appointments, sitting by her mother's side and reading stories that made her smile. They also found ways to honor the truth of how they started. They framed their first courthouse photo, a reminder of the day everything began, a lie that led them to something real. At night, they cuddled on the couch, whispering dreams of starting a family of their own someday. "I never thought I'd deserve this," Daniel admitted softly one evening, his forehead resting against hers. "And I never thought I'd find you," Ava whispered back, tears of joy in her eyes. Every morning, they woke up grateful, not for the money or the grand apartment, but for the love they fought to protect. 1 year after their real wedding, Daniel and Ava returned to the same courthouse where their journey began. This time, they weren't there for a contract, but to adopt a little girl who had no family of her own, a bright, giggly child who reminded them both of second chances. As they stood together signing the papers, Ava glanced at Daniel and saw tears shimmering in his eyes. He looked at her and their new daughter with such tenderness it took her breath away. "I thought love would destroy me," he whispered, voice breaking, "but you showed me it's the only thing worth living for." That evening, they hosted a small celebration in their home, surrounded by close friends, employees who had become like family, and Ava's mother. The penthouse that once felt cold and empty now overflowed with laughter, warmth, and love. Daniel knelt beside Ava and their daughter as fireworks sparkled outside the tall windows, wrapping his arms around them both. "No more pretending," Ava said softly, her head resting on his shoulder. "Never again," Daniel promised, kissing her forehead. In that moment, they knew they had built something real, something no scandal or secret could ever break. Together, they proved love doesn't have to start perfectly to end beautifully. And sometimes, the biggest miracles come from the lies we never meant to tell. As years passed, Ava and Daniel watched their daughter grow up in a home filled with warmth, trust, and laughter. Their love, once born from desperation, became the unshakable foundation of a family stronger than either had ever dreamed possible. Every morning, Daniel brought Ava coffee with a kiss, whispering how grateful he was that she said yes twice. Every evening, they tucked their daughter into bed, telling her stories of courage, love, and second chances. The world still remembered the headlines, but Ava and Daniel didn't care. They knew the truth. What started as a fake marriage had become the truest love either had ever known. And in quiet moments, watching the sunrise from their rooftop, sharing whispered promises in the dark, they both understood that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most unlikely lies. Together, they proved love isn't about perfect beginnings, but about fighting for each other every single day. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss more unforgettable tales of love, hope, and second chances right here on Hearts and Billions. And share in the comments. Do you believe true love can start with a lie and become something real?